Self-driving cars log their first pedestrian fatality. Chad and I have the great Tesla debate. The Austin bomber exposes vulnerabilities in parcel carriers. Trump announces Chinese tariffs, and we are wordless in Seattle. I'm JP.
And I'm Chad.
And we discuss all these topics and more in this episode of What the Truck.
Hey, so what kind of beer are you drinking today, JP?
Shout out to Bell's Two-Hearted, my ride or die.
Wow, the same beer every time. Nice.
What do you got?
Well, what I got is shout out to local brewery here in Chattanooga, Hutton and Smith. I'm drinking the Good Schist. You want to know about it? It's what they do with it is they add abundant late additions and dry hopping with Huell melon highlight for this excellent.
What does it taste like?
American Pale Ale. It's tropical and juicy with a firm malt backbone.
Are you just reading off the can?
Not anymore. It's definitely good schist. I'll tell you that.
All right. Why don't we get into it?
Well, let's play Did You Know first. And,
yeah. Explain this game, Chad.
This time it's to test out what does JP know about cryptocurrency terms. You're kind of down with it, right? You know some good terminology.
I've read a little bit. I kind of lurk on our Bitcoin. Disclosure, I don't actually hold any cryptocurrencies, but I've been, kind of eyeing the market and, researching about blockchain. So I haven't seen the list that you're about to read. So if I look like a total noob, maybe it's because I am.
Noob is not one of the terms that you're about to be tested on. We're going to ask you 10 terms, and we're going to see how you fare. All right, term number one, just like this is a softball one, just an easy. You ready?
Yep.
Hodl.
Hodl. Comes from a drunk 2013 forum post during the first Bitcoin crash when someone said, "I'm hodling," but it means to hold. It means actually the backronyms hold on for dear life, and it's how Bitcoin and cryptocurrency investors ride out the bear market.
Holding on to a coin instead of selling it. We'll give that one to you. I think that you understood that term. In fact, you gave us more than we needed. TLDR on that one. Altcoin.
Altcoins are basically the alternative coins to Bitcoin and Ethereum. They're all the small coins that pop up. Litecoin is probably one of the more well-known ones. Jesus coins, also known as shit coins.
No, I'm sorry. That's not correct. It's it's every cryptocurrency other than Bitcoin.
Okay. All right.
That was very. You were informed.
I was saying every cryptocurrency except for Bitcoin and Ethereum, but okay, whatever.
Well, you know what? In that case, if that's what we'll give that one to you. We're feeling generous. FOMO.
Fear of missing out.
Yeah,
has to do with people buying high in the market, which is usually a bad idea.
Exactly. Very good. So how about this one for a curveball? JOMO. Not FOMO, but JOMO.
Oh, I think I know what this means. I think it means joy of missing out.
Nice. 4 for 4, the joy of missing out, right when you've dodged a bullet.
Yeah, so if you bought if you bought Bitcoin when it was at 8,000, then it goes up to 20,000. You see all these people jump in. It drops back down to 10,000. You have the joy of missing out at that high price.
How about this one? Moon.
We're going to the moon. That reflects Bitcoin fanatics' belief that Bitcoin will somehow one day be worth $1 million a coin.
Everyone wants their coins to go up. Very good. 5 for 5. Bag holder.
Bag holder are the people that the naive small investors who get left holding the bag after a pump and dump scheme, normally on altcoins.
Yes, very nice. Shitcoin, you've already alluded to it.
Yeah, so basically just worthless coins with dubious utilities.
Right on. All right, so far so good. I'm still not letting you see the terms.
Okay.
DYOR.
I don't know.
Oh, do your own research.
Oh, okay.
You heard that one?
Maybe I should have done my
okay.
own research.
Yeah. FUD.
FUD is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's basically when the president of Goldman Sachs says Bitcoins are a scam and it's going down to zero and blah blah blah. They're spreading FUD.
Finally, whale.
Whale is just a big investor. And
Boom.
whales, they can move the market a lot.
A super wealthy trader with a lot of money to spend. Bing, bing, bing. 90%. You got an A. Very nice on the crypto terms, JP. Killing it.
A minus.
We're impressed, all of us.
Oh, cool.
Okay. Well, why don't we hop into the stories of the week?
Yeah, sure. So one of the main things that we've been covering, FreightWaves covers a lot of autonomous vehicle technology, also known as driver assist technology, but basically everything that helps trucks sort of intelligently map their surroundings, steer themselves, improve safety and productivity.
Yeah, and so a big thing happened this week.
Yeah, so this is the first time this has happened. An Uber self-driving Volvo SUV, an XC90, in the either late night,
It was 10 p.m.
to 10 p.m. on Sunday, hit a pedestrian in Tempe, Arizona, where Uber's been conducting extensive self-driving tests for over a year. Hit a pedestrian, and she later died of her injuries.
And Tempe, Arizona, and it's Arizona. A consumer watchdog, the consumer watchdog project director John Simpson blamed lax regulation on the accident, and he said Arizona has been the Wild West of robot car testing with virtually no regulations in place. He said, and when there's no sheriff in town, people get killed.
Plenty of people are getting killed by cars all the time. But, and so my first thoughts were that, okay, I wrote a story about this when it first broke on Monday afternoon. And I wanted to put it in the context of overall automotive fatalities, right?
Yeah.
Like specifically deaths per 100 million vehicle miles. And if you look at that number over the course of the 20th century, it's basically the very highest when cars are first introduced. So in the 20s, we're looking at 24 deaths per 100 million miles. It basically drops exponentially. In around 1950s, 1960, it's about 10.
Yeah.
So it's already been cut in more than half. It's been under 2 deaths per 100 million vehicle miles since about 1991.
Wow.
So it's been under
data,
and it's kind of flattened out. Okay.
Yeah.
We've been trying to improve human-driven cars for about 90 years, right?
Yeah.
And we've done a great job. We've been working on autonomous for about 5 years, and they're already about 50% safer than human-driven cars.
And that's really interesting stats. One of the things right after the collision, the following day, the police chief of Tempe, Arizona, Sylvia Moir, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. She said she looked at the video evidence and she said it's very clear it would have been difficult to avoid this collision in any kind of mode. Which at the time, I think a lot of us were starting to think, well, it was dark and, this pedestrian must have not been paying much attention.
They were jaywalking.
She just kind of maybe almost jumped out in front of the car.
Yeah, so the story started, it almost seemed like, the sheriff was carrying water for Uber in some way, basically saying that a human driver would have hit the person in the exact same way that the autonomous vehicle did.
And I think we should make sure that we note who the victim was. She was Elaine Hertzberg. She was 49 and just walking her bike outside of the crosswalk.
Right.
So we thought that. Then today the video comes out.
And I kind of can't believe you made me watch that video, Chad.
I'm sorry, but it's in the interest of our investigative journalism.
And well, I'm and to reflect, I'm kind of glad you did make me watch the video because it was different than what I expected. I kind of expected, this Uber car driving 38 miles an hour down some sort of urban road. Someone jumps out from the sidewalk in front of it. Bam, nothing you can do. But that's not really what the video showed, was it?
No. It was going 38 in a 40. It wasn't speeding, according to reports. But it showed the video footage showed both the front, like what was happening, and then also what the driver who was behind the wheel was doing. And it really looks like the victim was like in the road, like had already crossed a couple of lanes.
Yeah, so she was. So the Uber car was on the rightmost lane of a 3-lane.
That's what it looked like.
Road at least, and so the victim was coming from the left, had already crossed 2 lanes of traffic before the Uber car hit her.
It looks
when you watch the video, you really think that okay, this the sensors on this car really should have picked her up.
Indeed, and also the reverse camera showing the driver or the person behind the wheel not driving. He was looking down the entire time. So the report that said his first alert to the collision was the sound of the collision was because he wasn't looking. Right. Do we know anything about this guy?
Brain was off. The main thing I've heard about this person is that they did serve time in the early 2000s for armed robbery, which, as you astutely pointed out earlier, doesn't help the situation.
Right. Because we want autonomous to succeed. Uber, get your shit together, right?
Right. We know this technology is safe, but Uber has so many PR challenges. It's really kind of surprising and disconcerting that they're still exposing themselves to this kind of negative publicity. I mean, we know these things are going to happen, but I mean, come on.
Yeah, they can do better because we all want to be able to have cars drive us wherever we want without having to drive. And this is a setback.
All right. Is it time for the great Tesla debate between JP and Chad?
I don't know how great it's going to be, but I think I'm up against the ropes here as a Tesla believer. But go ahead, let's try this.
So I'm kind of a well-known Tesla bear, and today, this week I wrote a story rounding up all of the negative headlines about Tesla recently, and so really
you're a hater.
I'm kind of a hater. I'm not a hater of electric cars. I think it will happen. I just think that Tesla is a particularly poorly run car maker.
What? Why? Why are they so bad?
Okay, why are they so bad?
I mean, everyone is keenly aware of them. To me, that's a sign of success.
They have a great brand. Elon Musk is a charismatic salesman. But they've made some pretty bad decisions, and they're not living up.
Henry Ford made bad decisions.
They're not living up to their own hype. Yeah, but Henry Ford made money for every car he made.
Later, not at first. He failed with his first 2 car companies.
That's true. And Elon might fail with his first car company.
Well, we'll see.
So here's what happened. There's been an exodus of senior management at Tesla in the past, call it 6 weeks. The first one, their vice president of sales left, which at a particularly bad time during their make or break product launch of the Model 3 car, which is supposed to be their entry into mass market vehicles that finally makes the company profitable.
Right.
So he left in the middle of that. Their chief accounting officer left, their corporate treasurer left, and their VP of finance left.
That all happened last week.
That's 3 titles, but it's 2 people, and that happened last week.
Okay, so can I respond to that? Go ahead.
I'm not finished yet. And so then some headlines came out. Basically, some Tesla engineers went to CNBC and said, we're really concerned about the quality of the parts that are coming out of the Gigafactory. A full 40% of them have to be reworked or remanufactured because they're faulty in some way. And this is after Tesla already paused production at the end of February for 4 days to fix these issues. And industry commenters have said that 40% parts need reworking. That indicates a quality control issue a full order of magnitude above what a normal car maker should be facing. So, their key people are leaving. They're still, destroying $1 billion of wealth every quarter. The parts that they're making don't work the way that they're supposed to, and the Model 3s that they have been producing aren't the $35,000 mass market versions. They're the high spec $50K plus versions that I don't see how that has mainstream appeal.
I've heard that too, and that's disappointing to me because as a consumer, you get enticed by the $35,000 price point. Whoa, I could get into this market at $35,000, but you
especially if I didn't have to buy gas.
Yeah, but you start to doubt the validity of that. They seem to be, granted, they seem to be better at making $100,000 vehicles for the wealthy elite of Orange County. But can I just respond to one of your points? Because one of Consumer Edge analysts had meetings at the end of last week, so a week ago.
At Gigafactory.
And based on their conversations with management, they said, we do not believe there is a serious issue driving these exit decisions, and we would caution against reading too much into these headlines at this time. They said basically Tesla will need to replace the role of their services at some point. They're not freaking out about it. They had a variety of reasons for their departures, and I'm sure there's stress. People are pointing the finger at Tesla.
It must be extraordinarily difficult to be the finance guy for an automotive startup. Which there aren't automotive startups. You know what I mean? Every car company is an incumbent. People don't do this. He expects a lot from his people. He gets a lot from his people. And, shout out to Elon Musk for putting a roadster into orbit around the sun.
I don't know if that's
for changing the way, for basically pioneering commercial space flight and for his vision. I have a lot of respect for him as a thinker and a leader and an innovator. But, it's really, really hard to mass produce technologically advanced cars for the first time. And I think his decision at the beginning of 2017 to skip the soft tooling prototype phase of Model 3 pre-production. And so what I'm talking about is basically you order these machine tools to build the parts of a car, but they're sort of cheaper, adjustable machine tools, and you calibrate them correctly after some experiment and get them to make the parts exactly right. Then you order the permanent versions, right?
And you think that
he decided to skip that prototyping phase, which GM doesn't do that, Ford doesn't do that. And he decided to skip it because he thought it'd be faster and cheaper. I think that's coming back to haunt him. That was a bad CEO level decision.
As a believer, I would say that is the one thing I kind of personally wish that they had done differently. I wish that they had figured out a partnership with an actual OEM, original equipment manufacturer, so that they could produce these things, because they never have done that.
Right.
I will say that.
And I think the end game for the Tesla bear who thinks that the equity is crashing and going to zero is that they're going to get bought out. They have great technology, they have great intellectual property, they have a valuable brand. Someone's going to want that. There will always probably be Tesla cars, but who knows who's going to control the board.
All right, fair enough. Well, let's move on to our next story of the week, which it's national news. It's about the FedEx facility near San Antonio, the bomb that went off and fortunately only injured one employee.
So we're talking about Mark Corbett, the serial bomber who was identified and tracked to a hotel, and then, as authorities were closing in on him, he blew himself up. But what we're interested in with this story is what exactly?
So, yeah, exactly. Like, it's a national story. It was big news at the time. It happened at a FedEx facility. But what does it have to do for us in the trucking and supply chain industry? And I would say that, it's a lot more than just like some minor disruptions at the FedEx facility. I would say that this has to do with a very large issue, which is, e-commerce continues to fuel a growth in package volumes.
Right.
And with that comes increased risks of counterfeit, theft, and hazardous packages. And remember, way back in 2000 after 9/11, the TSA began to screen 100% of packages transported by way of passenger jet.
Interestingly, FedEx has one of the largest airliners in the world, but they carry just their 747s or whatever. They carry just cargo, and so they might not actually be subject to the same kind of screening as the TSA. Now, this is also.
So you're saying like jets could blow up as well?
Yeah, I'm saying how is it possible in 2018 that they can't detect the difference between my kid's birthday present from her grandmother and a bomb?
Yeah, and which is I guess to finish my thought too about that ground shipping, however, hasn't faced the same scrutiny. And FedEx Ground moves more than 8 million packages a day through 37 hubs, which is obviously an enormous volume that would require next level technology and facilities to screen. And so far, FedEx has not responded to questions about its screening and detection protocols.
Right, but if people if this becomes the new thing, and we know that terrorist activity is sort of fueled by media coverage, that it's imitative of previous successes, we really do expect some kind of rigorous response from parcel carriers.
Yes.
To be able to guarantee that they're not dropping off a bomb at people's houses.
Yeah, it affects your consciousness. Like yesterday, we got I got a Zappos delivery on my porch last night, and I was bringing it into the home to give to my son, and I said, hope it's not a bomb. Just as a joke, because it affects your consciousness.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's sad but true. Another story. This has been a week of big stories.
Right.
Just today, Donald Trump announces tariffs on Chinese imports. Will this spark a global trade war?
Definitely increases the risk, according to Ibrahim Bayan, FreightWaves chief economist, and you can read his story on FreightWaves.com. But no, it's really disconcerting. I mean, there are certain abuses, yes, that China has done. For example, certain companies that do business in China, they require the Chinese government requires those companies to forego intellectual property protections.
Right.
And so, everyone knows that.
Yeah, we're getting ripped off on that.
Yeah, people get ripped off on software, on, entertainment, things like
IP.
Like film and music, even down to the design of haute couture fashion clothing is considered intellectual property, and the counterfeits that come out of those and show up in the black markets on the Battery Park and things like that.
So yeah, go. I'm sorry.
No, that's all part of these abuses.
Is that what it's about? Because I keep hearing the United States runs this hefty goods trade deficit with China of $375 billion.
Yeah. So we have a massive trade deficit with China because we're a comparatively wealthy country. We buy more stuff from them than they buy from us, right? That makes sense. We have a service and information-oriented economy, not a manufacturing-oriented economy. So we're not, services like if you're a lawyer or if you're a programmer or, whatever you are, that's not as easily exportable as, assembling an iPhone.
Yeah. And
So we naturally run a trade deficit with China. That's been part of Trump's sort of anxiety about trade, his protectionist rhetoric on the campaign trail.
is $375 billion an accurate number?
I actually don't think so. I think that the way that they measure trade deficits is outdated. And I'll give you an example that I read on quartz.com. They were talking about just the value of the iPhones that we import from China is like 5.5% of the entire trade deficit. But they said that that's really misleading because most of the components of the iPhone are actually created and built in allied countries, countries that are allied to the U.S. like South Korea and Taiwan. Those components are merely assembled in China. And so when China ships the iPhone to the U.S., they're not getting all of that money. They're adding.
And that's calculated in.
They're adding value, They're adding value late in the supply chain or in the value chain of that product. But when the trade deficit's calculated, they're getting all of that.
Yeah.
When really it should be attributed to like I said, South Korea, Taiwan, and so by some estimates, if the trade deficit was calculated in a different way that took into account the sophistication and complexity of the global supply chain, our trade deficit with China would be as much as 36% lower right off the bat.
Yeah, I read that too. There's an Asian economics professor who estimated that and said the deficit's much lower. Regardless, could this spark a trade war? It looks like China has some retaliation ideas up their sleeve regarding agriculture.
Yeah, specifically with agriculture. And, so China's the biggest importer of American soybeans. There are other things like grain that are really, when the international market is such that it makes sense for the U.S. to export grain, there's a huge volume for railroads carrying grain to port. If that calculus changes, if tariffs get placed on that business will evaporate. So, I mean, it's really complicated. And it's going to take a long time to suss out all of the various manifold effects. But one thing I would keep an eye on are the stock prices of retailers like Walmart, who end up selling a lot of Chinese products at low cost to American consumers.
I think a Morgan Stanley analyst said that it would have a moderate impact on both economies. We'll see. We don't even know the extent of the tariffs yet, but it's big news this week. And finally, less of a national story, more of a regional one. But some of our data analysts at FreightWaves have put together some interesting statistics on what's going on in Seattle. So we've called it loadless in Seattle. They're a black hole for truckers right now. My question for you is, how did this happen?
The short answer is that port traffic fell off for Seattle. Every other West Coast port has posted positive growth year to date for 2018. Long Beach grew 16%, for example. Except for Seattle. Seattle is negative 22% growth year to date, 2018. The city has been starved for freight. Spot prices have cratered. Turndowns have cratered from 20% of all loads to 5%, meaning that trucks are being forced to accept lower prices. And the lead times, interestingly, tender lead times have also shortened, meaning that shippers know that there are more loads than trucks, and they're not worried about finding a truck to move their freight, and they're taking advantage of these low prices to get stuff out. But yeah, it's a combination of factors. Seattle's a traditional backhaul market, but
so this is somewhat normal for Seattle.
There's a normal dip after the end of Apple season. But the shocking underperformance in port container traffic is really dragging down the whole regional market.
Okay. Loadless in Seattle. Well, that wraps up our top 5 stories of the week. Now, JP and I are going to play Big Deal or Little Deal, where JP and Chad run down the rest of the week's news in 2 minutes. The Fed appears to raise rates again. Big deal or little deal?
Little deal. 3 hikes are already priced into the market, and you can tell this because the 10-year generic treasury yields are hovering around 2.9% in anticipation of higher rates. All this does is marginally increase the cost of debt. Congress praises blockchain technology as revolutionary. Big deal or little deal?
Big deal. Since when does Congress do much of anything, especially calling something revolutionary, other than the Revolutionary War? Also, it calls out the hypocrisy of Google and Twitter and Facebook and their censorship of the term blockchain and cryptocurrency. Another major storm hits the Northeast. Big deal or little deal?
Little deal. With the Northeast, we're talking about a non-producing, congested backhaul market with low average truck velocities that's already way too expensive. 12 inches of snow is just more of the same. Now, legislation introduced Wednesday morning calls the Drive Safe Act would legalize 18 to 21-year-olds to drive semis across state lines. Big deal or little deal?
Little deal. 18 to 21-year-olds can already drive hundreds of miles within their own state. They will be responsible, well-vetted drivers in this program. And, it might help the driver shortage a little, but it's not a major solution. Keep truckin', guns for unicorn status after securing another $50 million in Series C funding. Big deal or little deal?
Huge deal. A $1 billion valuation for a trucking data company really shows how dramatically the landscape post-ELD has shifted. We know data is the new oil, and now we're starting to figure out who the refiners and sellers of that black gold are going to be. Now, more numbers tell the same story. Trucking costs are rising. Big deal or little deal?
Big deal. Downward pressure on retail margins. General Mills are going to raise cereal prices, and this may just be the first domino. Meanwhile, it might help the driver shortage a little. And that'll do it for the big stories this week. As always, we go into more detail about each of the topics we've talked about today on our website, FreightWaves.com. We will continue to publish this podcast weekly, so be sure to subscribe to What the Truck on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. Also, make sure to leave us a review to let us know what you think of our new podcast.
And if you're into learning about technology that's shaping up the industry, you definitely want to be at Transparency 18 in Atlanta this May. Visit transparency18.com to learn more about the event.
That'll do it for today. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next week on What the Truck.